There are so many companies that are taking massive losses right now, and a lot of it is due to the high interest rates, and also a lot of it is due to the shaky economy that we are in right now, because people don't have money to pay bills, guys. In fact, Goldman Sachs just announced that they are losing $6 billion because of their failed Apple Card investment. And the reason why this is interesting is because not only is $6 billion a ton of money, but it just goes to show you how many people are delinquent and not paying their bills. Just in the second quarter of 2024 alone, Goldman Sachs stands to lose $400 million. The CEO of Goldman Sachs says the reason for this $400 million hit comes from two primary things: selling off its General Motors credit card partnership and selling real estate loans. According to the report, General Motors' card business will be sold to Barclays with around $2 billion in card balances. So this most recent loss isn't even because of the failed Apple Card losses, it's because additional losses with a credit card related to General Motors and supposedly selling real estate loans. Well, why are people losing money selling real estate loans right now? It's because people aren't paying for those loans, so they become worth less money, or they could be commercial real estate loans worth a lot less money because the buildings have dropped in value so much. So Goldman Sachs reported that they lost over $6 billion pre-tax since the beginning of 2020 on a big chunk of its consumer lending business. Kind of a coincidence that it all happened right around the time of the pandemic when people kind of stopped paying their bills, huh? One of the biggest factors that contributed to this $6 billion loss is all of the charge-offs with the Apple Card, because those charge-offs ended up being nearly double any other credit card. Who would have thought, guys? The Apple customers, people looking to buy Apple products, actually default twice as much than regular cards. That's not something you expect to hear, but I think it's not that surprising at the same time, because you probably have a lot of people that got these Apple cards that could never really afford those Apple products to begin with. So you get the card, you buy the Apple products, you don't pay the bill, you get to keep the products, and you take a hit on your credit score. That seems to be like kind of what people did. But Goldman Sachs has gotten burned so bad recently on consumer banking products when it comes to loans, when it comes to consumer lending, when it comes to everything. People have stopped paying, so they're like, we got to get out of this. We're losing too much money. And $6 billion over a 4-year period is nothing to sneeze at. They say that right now, current Apple Card credit card balances total about $17 billion, and Goldman Sachs could face even bigger losses when it offloads this Apple partnership. Apparently they're selling both the GM credit card and the Apple credit card balances to Barclays. So clearly they're going to be selling those credit card balances at a steep discount, kind of just like debt collections. That's exactly what this is, guys. This is just like how a debt collection agency works. You know, they're purchasing the debt for pennies on the dollar in hopes that they're going to collect it. If that doesn't tell you where things are at right now, I don't know what does. And apparently they're still looking around to see who's going to be the best candidate to purchase this debt, because probably a lot of these creditors don't want it unless it's going to come at a steep discount. And even then, maybe they still don't want it. Maybe they still don't want to deal with the collections process, because let's face it, at the end of the day, it's basically a customer service nightmare for those companies. They have to go in and make phone calls, try to collect delinquent debt. It's a nightmare. So we already know, based on stories like this and others I've shared with you in the past, about how much the credit card debt has risen over the past year or two, and how much the delinquency rates are also on the rise. But how are people actually saving money right now with how bad inflation has taken a toll on their finances? Well, there was a new survey that came out that revealed some answers to this. There's a few categories that Americans are cutting back on right now, and a big one is travel. In fact, that was touted as still being one of the strong spending categories after the pandemic, because people were doing all this doom spending and revenge traveling and basically getting their fill that they couldn't get while everything was on lockdown. Well, that all seems to be over with now, because according to a recent survey, the average traveler planned to take 2.3 trips during the summer months, down from 3.1 in 2023. That's basically one entire less trip, right? If it was 3 before, now it's 2. A Bank of America study also found out in May that average travel spending has fallen by 1.5% year over year. And in the second quarter earnings report, many big travel-related companies reported losses and also expectations of a weakening economy to come. Companies like Airbnb, Hyatt, Marriott, Wyndham, Expedia, and Hilton all said that they expect travel demand to weaken in the coming months, and that was just in August. So it sounds like the jig is up. People are out of money to be doing this, and the ones who are still doing it are probably well enough off where they don't have to worry much about it. Here's what the CEO of Hilton said. He said they've spent all that money, now they're borrowing more, and so they have less available disposable income and capacity to do anything, including travel. And when he said spend all that money, he meant the savings that were built up during the pandemic. That's been gone for a while now. In fact, the personal savings rate is near an all-time low. In August, Disney reported a moderation of consumer demand at its theme parks. The lower income consumer is feeling a little bit of stress. A little bit? I think it's a lot. And the crazy thing is, going to Disney is one of those trips and vacations that people are known to go into debt for. I actually made a video about this when I first arrived here in California. Many people can justify in their minds going thousands or if not tens of thousands of dollars into debt just to bring their kids to Disney for the very first time, which means that a lot of those people have likely tapped out and exhausted those funds already during 2022 and 2023 when people were going on these spending sprees. And by the way, in case anybody wants to know, I'm at McNear's Beach over here in San Rafael. Beautiful waterfront spot for you guys. Right now, with all of the uncertainty that's happening surrounding the election coming up, surrounding the future of our economy, it's normal to be worried about the direction things are going, especially when we're talking about the future of your retirement savings. But there has been one asset that has stood the test of time, and today there's no better proof of that than right now, and that is gold. In fact, gold just hit a brand new all-time high at over $2,500 an ounce and has remained pretty steady there. Why? Because there's so much fake money pumped into the system, and when that happens, real money starts showing its true value. For centuries, gold has been a hedge against market volatility and economic instability, and with a gold IRA from Noble Gold Investments, you can harness the power of precious metals to protect your financial future. By rolling over your existing IRA or 401k into a self-directed gold IRA, you can enjoy the potential for long-term growth and stability. You can diversify your portfolio with a tangible asset that has real value, and setting up your gold IRA has never been easier with Noble Gold Investments. Don't let the uncertainty of this economy and the election keep you up at night. Visit boardandarrowgold.com and you can get up to 10 ounces of free silver with a qualifying IRA. Now, the next thing people are cutting back on are clothes. The share of Americans who purchase most of their clothes in the value tier rather than standard or premium has increased in each of the past 2 years by about 30% as of July, according to Bank of America. The report also said that Gen Zers and millennials were among the demographic groups that had shifted more toward value apparel over the past year. Gen Zs and millennials are also spending more on necessities as they grow older and take on more financial obligations, which leaves them less money for discretionary items. Surprise, surprise, time to grow up, huh? Now here's one that I wasn't expecting to read, because the cost of this item has been going up substantially, but yet it's something people are spending less money on, and once you find out why, it's pretty disturbing, guys. And that is car insurance, okay? Car insurance, as we know, has gone up over 20% just in the last year alone. And when we look at the cumulative last couple of years, it's probably gone up 40 to 60% for a lot of people. In fact, only eggs and frozen non-carbonated juices have had a bigger year-over-year increase in price, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, probably using the most recent inflation data, which we'll get to in a little bit. But listen to this. The elevated costs of car insurance have led more U.S. drivers to just go without it. The Insurance Research Council says the share of uninsured drivers rose from about 11% in 2019 to 14% in 2022. But that's only as of 2022. When we look at data from J.D. Power going back to 2023, it suggests that this number has risen even further in the past year. So I'm willing to bet that as of today, over 20% of people maybe are driving without insurance now. And I don't know how people are getting away with this, guys, because I told this story once before on the channel, but I have an older Camaro and I dropped insurance on it for a little bit temporarily because I moved the car and I wasn't driving the car. And I got a letter in the mail just a couple weeks later from the state of Florida saying that they were going to suspend my driver's license if I didn't reinsure the car. So I'm not really sure how people are getting away with this. Maybe they're dropping insurance and driving on a suspended license too. That's the only thing I can reasonably come up with. And driving without insurance is basically illegal in every state. And these people who said that they were doing this said they're doing it because they're willing to take the chance, that way they can help themselves afford groceries, housing, and health care. Okay, so now car insurance is considered a non-essential for people who are going broke. So just think about that when you're on the road next time you almost crash into somebody. The next expense people are ditching right now, and it shows in the corporate numbers, is home improvement projects. I've made a couple of videos on this earlier in the year, and stores like Lowe's, for example, their same store sales fell by 5% in the second quarter of this year compared with the same quarter 1 year ago. And Lowe's says that they expect their same store revenues to decline by as much as 4% overall in 2024. So it's not looking too good. And they're not alone. Obviously, a lot of the home improvement stores are taking a hit right now. Home Depot, they're in the same boat. They expected its full year same store sales to decline by as much as 4% in 2024 as well. Here's what the CEO of Lowe's said about this. We're all aware that we have an environment of elevated interest rates and inflation, and because of that, the DIY customer is just on the sidelines waiting for some form of an inflection to take place. Well, it looks like we're pretty much on the precipice of that. You know, we're expecting the Fed rate cut coming up later this month, and then that's probably when the real trouble is going to start. Because let's not forget that a lot of these projects and a lot of the money people spend at these stores is finance. You know, people spend money on home improvement DIY projects that often cost thousands of dollars, and with the higher interest rates to borrow, it's not looking as appealing as it was when interest rates were lower. And on top of that, you factor in inflation and how much extra it costs to do all this work now compared to before. Many people are just looking at their bathroom and kitchen and saying, I think I can deal with it the way it is. Now, obviously, we've got the most recent CPI report, and that came out at 2.5%, as if anyone actually believes that. And I think the expectation was 2.6%, so it actually came in lower than expected. Don't forget, guys, the number in July was 2.9%. So that is a pretty big drop from July to August. But get this, housing costs accounted for more than 70% of the overall year-over-year increase. And even a lot of economists and experts are now skeptical that this most recent inflation reading accurately gives a snapshot of the market today. So even well-renowned people are starting to question whether or not this data is really accurate. But think about this. If housing accounted for more than 70% of the most recent CPI data and inflation continuing to go up, that means the Fed is going to start cutting rates even though inflation on housing really hasn't been solved. This problem hasn't been fixed. Okay, so they're going to cut rates, and housing is still basically at all-time highs. It has come down a little bit, but not much. In some places it is coming down meaningfully, but in most areas it's still just way too expensive. So that's why I've been saying that this whole fight on inflation has been fake, because housing is obviously something that we all need. It's an essential for us to live a dignified life unless you want to be homeless. The Fed was never serious about getting this under control, because if they were, they would keep rates higher for longer. And when you take a look at this chart here, it's a pretty good explanation of why all of this is such a huge problem still, guys. This chart goes back to the monthly inflation rate since the beginning of 2020 all the way through now. Okay, and you can see since then we only had a few months, and one of them was during the brief recession in 2020 when we actually had some deflation. All the rest of the time we had significant inflation. And even though it has slowed down, all of those lines on the graph are increases in prices along the way. And guess what? Those price increases are basically permanent. We might see a little bit of relief in some categories, like they're saying, well, you know, gas prices are down 10.3% right now from last year, and also energy prices are down 0.8% from a year ago. So yeah, that helps out a little bit, but it's nowhere near back to pre-pandemic pricing for any of these things. And according to a blog post from the White House Council of Economic Advisors, it showed that the core inflation rose 3.2% year over year, but if you cut out housing, it's only 1.8%. They always want to cut out housing, food, and energy, which are all the essentials that we have to buy in order to make the numbers look good. Now, speaking of inflation, a lot of people are worried about the upcoming election and who's going to get elected and how bad their policies are going to affect inflation. It doesn't really look good on either side of the aisle, to be honest, because people are worried that if Harris gets elected, then she has all these plans to give people $6,000 a year, child tax credits. She wants to give small business owners $15,000 to start a business, which can easily be scams, just like the PPP loans or the EIDL loans. On top of that, giving $25,000 to first-time home buyers. Like, who's going to pay for that, guys? All that stuff is inflationary. And on the Trump side of things, people are worried that his high tariffs and the potential mass deportations are going to cause problems with inflation as well, because obviously tariffs translate to a higher cost for us. When you have tariffs on something, we end up paying that higher cost. The higher costs for all businesses always get passed on to their customers in the end. So when you just look at it from that angle alone, it looks like no matter who gets elected, we are going to be seeing higher inflation in the future. But the interesting thing is, it looks like we're going to be on this collision course with recession regardless of what happens moving forward, because that's one reason that the Fed is looking at cutting now. They've seen the horrible jobs reports recently on how low the jobs numbers have come in, how much the unemployment rate has been going up, and how much the jobs were revised down earlier this year. It's all a disaster. And let's not forget about the layoffs and the job losses, guys. In fact, Amazon just announced that they're going to be closing 2 of its facilities here in California, and that's going to lead to hundreds of more people losing their jobs. And this is just the latest of many. They say they're going to be closing 2 fulfillment centers, one in Sacramento, where about 159 employees will lose their job, and one in Irvine, California, where 162 employees are going to lose their job. And just like Walmart and these other companies, they're offering their employees to transfer to other locations. But if you live in Irvine or you live in Sacramento and you got to move halfway across the state or to another state to continue working for Amazon, are you really going to do that? Probably not. It's just a way to try and give themselves good press. This is just the latest of the shutdowns in California, because they actually shut down a big fulfillment center in San Francisco last year and another one in the same area just a couple years ago. And you know what's interesting, guys? All you hear about is all of the layoffs. All you hear about is businesses closing, or in this case, like a fulfillment center closing, and you hear about how many people are going to lose their job from it. But you know one thing you're not hearing about lately? You're not hearing about how many people are getting jobs and how many businesses are opening and how many new jobs are being created at real businesses. Not forget about these phony government numbers that are just government healthcare jobs and teaching jobs. That basically doesn't count, because all of that stuff is government funded and subsidized in a way. And like Morgan Stanley recently reported, when you look at the actual jobs being created, minus those government jobs, minus the education jobs, minus the healthcare jobs, it's actually a negative number. You're not seeing the private jobs being created right now, which is a true sign of worry for this economy. Let us know, let everybody know how it's going in the comments. If you're someone looking for a job, I haven't heard too many good things about that recently. Do you live in an area where you're seeing a ton of new jobs coming available right now? Or are you seeing, stores and businesses and production plants closing right now? Let us all know, because everybody's from all around the world. People that watch this channel, live all across the country and in different countries. So the more information we can share with each other, the smarter we'll all get. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.